Well, welcome back. It's Andrew Eborn here, and I'm delighted to be joined by my usual guest here on the Andrew Eborn Show, Errol Musk. How are we doing, Errol?
Thank you. Thank you very well. Thank you.
It's a real pleasure. We were discussing the difference between South Africa and the US and this whole tipping culture. And you were
Yes.
saying last time that basically you go in somewhere and they do the standard way of forcing you either have 17.5%, well, that's too mean, or you get 25%, which is about right, and then a bit more than that to make sure you're being very, very generous. And you're sort of forced to at least go for the middle one on that sort of
Well,
basis.
I find it embarrassing if you go for the lowest one, so you don't want any trouble. But I mean, they do make a lot of money out of the tips, and I think it works. It seems to work very well. And, you know, on one occasion, my son there, Kimball, has many, many restaurants. I mean, so many that it's just, you can't even, I couldn't even name them all. There's so many in all the different cities. And he has this jet, he has a magnificent jet to go around to all the big jet, you can take a lot of people to his restaurants. He goes all around all the time looking at these restaurants in a jet. Anyway, I was in one of his restaurants. They only serve whole food. In other words, they're only naturally grown food, which is a very big thing in America because a lot of the restaurants started going over to GM food, and it's not really good for you, or rather, it makes you put on weight unnecessarily, and it's not right. So there's been for the last 20 years a fantastic move away to, sort of natural food, with the result that I was recently in New York City for a weekend in Manhattan. And as my ex-wife, my daughter's two daughters' mother, I don't like to call her ex-wife. We are very good friends. She was with me. I took her with me, and we were in New York on a Sunday in Manhattan for the whole day, all around Manhattan, and we never saw an obese person. Everybody looked like they just stepped out of the pages of Vogue magazine. I've never seen anything like it. And she's an ex-model herself, so uh, she she was a presenter, in fact, at times on television, and she remarked to me all the time, "Look at these people; they are just so beautiful." So they've become very health conscious. Anyway, what was I saying? Yes, so I was in one of my son's restaurants some years ago, and I was served by. I was single at the time. I was single, and I was served by a very, very attractive girl, a very, very, very attractive girl. And I just could, she was not that young. And, being as I'm a bit older, I sort of felt confident enough to say to her, she must have been in her 30s or something. I was confident enough to say to her, you know, would you like to have supper with me or something to that effect? And she agreed. And so the next evening, I went and took her for supper, you see. And she was marvelous. And I thought, well, she's a waitress, so she's obviously must have left school early or something like that. I don't know. So I'm from South Africa after all. And so I said to her, so no, she says, I have an MA or MBA or MA or MBA. I'm not sure.
Right.
I said, oh, really? She said, yes, she did a BA and then she did something and then she did this. And she now has a master's in this and that. So I thought, oh, and we sort of got talking. I tried to get past the whole thing, and eventually I must have said something. And then she said, as a waitress, I earn far more money than I would ever earn in my field.
Is that right?
In fact, she said, I'm leaving for Hawaii in a day or two for a 2 week holiday, and I'm taking my parents as as my sort of guests. And then I realized that working in my son's restaurant, she's earning a lot of money. And to give you an idea, my son gave me a card to use in his restaurant. So I said to him, what do I do with this card? He said, well, you just give it to the people when the bill comes.
Right.
And I said, okay. And I was quite surprised to see the prices of things in these restaurants. And I said, well, how much is on the card? Thinking, well, there must be, maybe there's $50 on the card or something like that. No, he said, there's $1,000 on the card. $1,000 on the
$1,000.
$1,000. Whoa. $1,000 on the card. I mean, in South Africa, that was 18,000 rands. That was £800 or £900. So I thought, okay, well, So then and that card was done in a few days, So you realize a lot of that money is going to these waiters, and of course you pay tax as well, I suppose, in the restaurant. So if you buy a steak in his restaurant, it's about $39, and then you add 30% tax to that and 10% state tax. So you add 40% to that, and so that's it puts it at like $52 or something.
Right.
And and it's huge. I mean, it's just so much.
Yeah.
The food is extremely good, of course.
Oh, no,
But you have to have a lot of
you had to have a
you
lot of
have
it.
to have a lot of money there.
Yeah.
And of course that's what keeps America going.
Right.
They don't hold back. They spend, and everybody's spending. And because everybody's spending, it's like a wheel that just goes faster and faster and faster, because everybody's spending. And as I was saying earlier to you, people don't do minor tasks around their home. If your washing machine or your dishwasher or something isn't working, they don't say, John, come and fix the dishwasher, the wife sort of thing. And he gets under with a vice grip and a screwdriver and all that sort of stuff. No. You phone Dishwashers, Incorporated. And I know it sounds crazy, but in half an hour, they're there.
Yeah.
Half an hour.
Yeah.
And half an hour later, your dishwasher's running.
And this is the problem, isn't it, Errol? Because a lot of people are sort of saying, no, which is fine. But I think what I find in a lot of places, that service, when they say at the end of a menu, service not included, in certain places it isn't. And you get very bad service. How does service compare in America these days?
Well, the service is extremely good. I mean, I don't, you are thinking about fixing a dishwasher. I think they just come and fix it. Right. You don't give them a tip. I've never seen that you would like give them a tip, because they charge so much money anyway. So I'd say to my daughter, I imagine something must have been repaired once, and I said to her, "Well, how much was that?" They said, "Oh, it's only $180." Well, it's £150. I thought, well, I could have fixed that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? Because you're so used to fixing things yourself. And this is what we were discussing last time, is that you would wash your own cars. You get Elon, the other children, to start washing cars at the age of 3 because they could understand them better. And I guess it's the same with dishwashers. If you could mend those, I bet you're there with a screwdriver yourself, aren't you?
Well, yes. But the thing is, what I noticed there is, because Guy, who's Alexandra's husband, rather, doesn't have to do that. He's got a very big office in the building, and he's got an office in town, and then sort of all linked up, with these sort of 3 computers and all that sort of stuff, screens, I mean. And he doesn't have to go away from places where he's dealing with $30 million and $80 million developments. He doesn't have to leave that and put on his, gloves or whatever it is, and his shorts and everything, and climb into the dishwasher cupboard behind the dishwasher. He doesn't have to do that, which is going to take him hours. He's going to get cut. He's going to get bruised, and he's not going to fix it. That's the worst part of it. He's not going to fix it. And he spent 3 or 4 hours trying, and then they have to get somebody in anyway. So most of the time. And so he spends that time in front of his equipment, all his things. And they can't afford to lose a contract. They as I discussed with you a little while ago, they take their work extremely seriously.
Right.
So even if they start telling you about their work, a little voice says to you, listen. Because in England, and perhaps in South Africa especially, perhaps in England, if you start talking about your work, you'd be what they call in South Africa a windgat, which means a blowhard. Do you know what I mean? So you think, what is this bloke? He's a blowhard telling me about how good his job is and how well he does. In America, that's not like that at all. If a bloke starts telling you about his job, you listen, because he loves it, and to him, he's basically telling you something that you need to hear, and it's good. It's not blowhard. He's so happy at what he's doing, and he wants you to know as well, and he wants you to share in his enthusiasm, you know, and even perhaps say to him, "Oh, I'd love to work in your company.
Right.
I'd love to work for you." And he'd say, "Well, send me your CV, and maybe we can find a place for you."
Right.
You know, and so the process of money going around in circles so fast results in a very, very, everything works. There's nothing doesn't work. You don't go out to the car when you've got a broken water pump or something and say, "I've bought one and I'm going to put it in myself," come back bloodied and broken and unable to work for the next 3 days,
Yes.
saying, "I didn't get it right. The car now is overheated. I have to do it. You know, everything's wrong now." You get somebody to do it.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's quite funny, you know, when I was there at the beginning, when we first moved to Malibu, my son, in his madness, bought me he always thought I liked sports cars for some reason. He bought me a Jaguar XKR,
Yes.
which is a supercharged Jaguar convertible, like the E-Type, but a later model. And it was 3 weeks old when the handbrake came up. It's left on the left of you, next to your seat. I pulled on it. The whole thing came up the whole thing with the cables all came up in my hand. And you know, Jaguar, you know, but of course, fabulous cars.
Yeah.
And that's just one of the things you accept with it. But anyway, took the car to the Jaguar place in Santa Monica. And of course, I wanted to, as it was here in South Africa, I wanted to go in and speak to the service manager and I wanted to talk to him about the car. And all. Oh, no, 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 no. You hand the car into a beautifully dressed lady at the front in a beautiful lounge. Your car disappears down a tunnel. You never see it again until you're called and the lady's waiting for you again in the beautiful lounge to say your car's outside, all polished and ready to go. You don't have any idea what happens in the screen or behind the scenes. There's no, you don't see anything. And so that's a bit hard. But in a way, you know, that's what works.
Yeah.
And
Well, and you make a really interesting point about pride, if you like, pride in people doing their job. And there does seem, looking around the world, Errol, there seems to be a big difference where we talked about this before about success. And in the States, they seem to celebrate success, but in a number of countries around the world, they resent it. Why do you think that is?
Well, yes, you know, it's true. And I mean, I was with my son-in-law recently when he was telling me about a big development that they'd succeeded with. And I actually found myself, we were on a riverboat doing a sort of river cruise in Texas, because there's a lot of rivers in West Texas. I don't know if you know that. Yeah. It's one of the wettest places in America. And we were on this sort of huge river lake. And he was telling me, and I wanted to enjoy this trip that we were doing. And he kept on and on about this $180 development. And I got to a point where I wanted to say, look, you know, I did that as well when I was a kid. You know, I mean, I've been there, you know, but I didn't, because he just couldn't stop telling me about this development. And I realized how proud he was of this development and he, you know, how he needed to tell me of all the steps he'd taken to ensure that everything was going to be all right. And you know, of course, I wake up when my daughter tells me that you know, his fee for that or something was $75,000.
Right.
You know, and you go, oh, gee, you know, how long did he work on that? Well, he was on that for at least 2 days. £60,000.
Good heavens!
You know, oh my word. And yeah, so it gives everybody time to do their work that they do without interruption.
Right.
So, for example, I've now got this Bentley, and I found, for example, that the passenger side door is not the vacuum that the electric motor that soft closes the door. Yeah. It's not working.
Oh no, you've only just got it. You only got it a few days ago when I spoke to you a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
So I phoned Bentley and they said no, they will. I should take it to Cape Town, which is 120 kilometers away. Well, I'll just I look on the internet myself. You see, see what I can find about it. But that's not what they want you to do. I'm probably going to break something if I do it. So I'm not going to do it. But over there, they, you know, it's quite extraordinary. You know, I've also got a Rolls Royce, and as it happens, and it's a Silver Spirit, so it's quite old. It's 45 years old,
Beautiful.
and it runs very well. But there are things I needed for it. And when I was in America, I wanted 6 months ago, rather, I wanted the seat motor, one of the seat motors cracked, and then so I wanted another one, and I contacted the place, and eventually I was led to a place in a faraway state, and I said I need this part, and within 24 hours, literally 24 hours, the part was delivered to me.
Right.
You know, something that I had been thinking, I'll fix it myself. I'll glue everything together. I'll find ways, you know, of doing this. I'll do it. Unfortunately, it cost me $500,
Right.
but within 24 hours or so of finding the place, it was in my hands.
Yeah. And
You know,
which is, and I love the fact that people are proud of what they do, and it's we should encourage pride. We should encourage pride
yes,
in nationalism and so on and so forth. It's a good thing, and people are trying to stamp that out. The difficulty is, as you said, when you were growing up, the reason you liked washing the cars and everything is you could discover things about it. The reason you got Elon to do
yes,
it, the reason you get Rushy to do it now, and on that sort of basis,
yes,
your current 7-year-old, is because they can discover things. Are
yes,
we
yes,
going to lose if we
yes.
delegate all of it?
We
Are
are
we going
going
to
to
lose
lose.
that ability?
Yes, definitely. I see it with men there that I might, for example, be at a place and know what's wrong. And I was, for example, at my daughter's husband's family owned the Half
Right.
Moon Hotel in Montego Bay in Jamaica, and it's 2 miles long. It includes the Golden Eye Beach,
Two
which
miles long, glorious. Yes, okay.
yeah, 2 miles long, and it has 180 villas along the sea at Montego Bay, and it also includes Golden Eye, which is the beach that Ian Fleming lived on, and of course
Right.
Ian Fleming's house is there. It's kept as a no one's allowed. It's not a public place. You're not allowed to go as a public person. But I have been in Ian Fleming's house there, and I've had a look at it, and you know, at his desk, I've sat at his desk, I've held his pen, and so on and so forth. But anyway, when I've been there, it's a completely self-contained resort, and it has its own generating plant and everything. Although they do have electric power from Jamaica, but in case they have you know, their own system. And so when I've been with Guy's father, who's the managing director of the whole place, you know, to give you an idea how big it is, they were doing renovations on one section. The renovations were $80 million.
Wow.
$80 million renovations, and not very much of the place was being renovated for $80 million. Anyway, it's probably the premier. As a matter of fact, my daughter Alexandra and Guy sent me a picture of herself with and him with Kate and William,
Right.
who holidayed there last year. You know, the four of them together. So, you know, the Queen used to go there quite a lot as well. But at any rate, um, um, I would have said to the manager, he was having trouble with the plant, and I said, look, I've installed many of these plants, so please let me have a look at it for you. He sort of, I am a consulting, I'm an engineer, and he was very nice to me, and wasn't rude to me, but he seemed to think, well, why would I even be bothered with something like that? He's got, you know, whereas I would have been keen to see where his problems lie, and I might perhaps have been able to give him a few tips on the whole thing, you know, because I've installed systems up to 2 megawatt, you know, generating systems for hotels and things, and yeah, so yeah, you do lose it. On the other hand, you're able to spend much more time at what you do
Sure.
and become very much better at what you do.
Yeah. Well,
You know,
and that's always the argument, isn't it, for embracing technology and so on and so forth. It's going to free you up to do the things that you really want to do. But from the sounds of it, there's some people who are doing those jobs at the moment because they really want to do it. What's going to happen to them?
well, I don't know. I mean, I can't see into the future that much. I mean, there will always be things that can't just be done by you know, artificial intelligence or something like that. It's always going to be hands needed. But I agree that I think we're already experiencing quite a lot of loss of trades in the world. Many of the young people today, young men today, are far less adept at things that I would have taken for granted in days past. But on the other hand, when I bought my first car, which was a Morris Minor, I was able to take the whole engine out as an 18 or 19-year-old boy. And I was not, I don't know why, but you take the whole thing apart. But because it was possible. But now, with all these modules that cars and everything are made of, you can't do anything to a car until you've analyzed it with a computer. And so, it's not really easy to do anything anymore. Not easy, but it's not as possible to learn the trade as much as it used to be. And so I mean, I obviously things get better and better and better all the time, and so in a sense, things have never been as good as they are now. I for example, see cars that you might think are in those days. If a car was over 4 years old, it was pretty ruined. But today, I see friends of mine driving cars here in South Africa, anyway, not in America, that the cars are sometimes 12 or 13 years old, but they seem still quite brand new.
Yes.
Still seem very brand new, and they don't seem to be problematic at all. And I think that's because they've improved these cars so much. On the other hand, you can't help noticing if you go to the United States, where I've been in several states recently, you don't see any old cars, which brings me to the question I ask the people in the motoring industry here. What do they do with the old cars? Because everybody's car is brand new. Everybody's car is brand new. My daughter's cars are brand new. What do they do with the old cars? Recently, she had a Model Y Tesla, and when I went recently, it turned out to be, it was now a Model X. So where's the Model Y? She says, oh, I don't know. So then I speak to the people here, and they say, oh, they just crushed them, which I thought, what?
Yeah.
They just crushed them? So, yeah, so...
Well, it is interesting, Errol. It's rather like the everlasting light bulb, isn't it? Nobody wants to invent that because otherwise the industry stops.
Well, yes. And then, of course, if you go to other countries and you see how hard-pressed many other countries are, and so the disparity between the United States and other countries is mind-blowing. I always used to say, or Elon used the phrase the first time, they are light years ahead of us, Dad. Light years. That was Elon's expression. These people are light years ahead of us.
Right.
And I then, of course, took that phrase on myself. They are light years ahead of us. And so as I'm sitting here talking to you on a laptop or something, or on a PC, if my PC had a problem, I just pick up the phone.
Right.
I don't start tinkering with it and seeing what's wrong. And some bloke is here in 25 minutes, and it's working again. The only thing that's different is I'm short of $120.
but that's the economy, and as I say, it's very interesting, and this is the thing that always worries people about the advances in technology. You sort of turn around and say, okay, it's great, we've got the job, this is what making society go. Even though you love doing it yourself, you recognize now that the whole sort of circle of life, if you like, requires other people to do it. Automation is going to happen. We've got robots doing things. Elon's busy developing all sorts of things, which means we will never have to do those tasks, even though we're going to designate it to somebody else. What reassurance can you give to the people who currently do those jobs, which they love, that they're not going to be able to do, whether they're going to be able to do something in life? Because that's the real problem. People need to have a purpose in life. If you take that purpose away, society is really struggling, isn't it?
Well, I think it's already happening a lot. What you are saying, which is what, the governments and Elon as well, is saying that there should be a universal salary that you get. Elon is a very big proponent of that, that people should get a universal salary if they require it. I think that does happen to a certain extent. But, I haven't got a great answer to that. But I'll tell you something. Many years ago, when I say many years ago, I mean like 50 years ago, my Elon's mother was born in Canada, in Saskatchewan, Regina, Saskatchewan. And of course, so she had relatives there. So the first time we went to America, I took her, which was about 1973, 1974. We went every year, in fact. Um, we went to visit her relatives, and of course, we went to the area where her family were farming, which was, some of them were farming, which was Saskatchewan. And I met her cousin, and his name, as I recall, was Miles. And he had this farm of his own, which was 1,200 acres. And in Canada, they've done them like all the stands face north south. They're perfect. They're like rigidly north south on the lines of longitude. Anyway, and he rented another two, so he had 3,600 acres.
Right.
And on these acres, this was 50 years ago, mind you, he farmed barley and different things, wheat and oats and all sorts of stuff like that. And so I imagined, coming from South Africa, that he had a large team of people. He must have, I figured, farm of this nature must have, I mean, the farms are so big you can't see them, you can't see the other end, type of thing. And he must have a lot of people. And he said to me, no, now this is hard to believe. He said, does it all himself. Everything himself.
Right. Him
and his wife. What? So then we went out to his combine, which was, it was about, I don't know, roughly about 45 yards, had wings on each side of about 45 yards. And then in the middle was this big machine by John Deere, and inside it was a television, a little office television, a seat, and everything. And he controlled the whole, he could do everything with this machine. He could take rocks out of the ground. He could plow the entire place. He could seed the entire place. He could harvest the entire place with this machine.
Right.
And it was just too hard to believe. And coming back here, I met farmers, and I told them, and one farmer, a friend of mine, young chap at the time, he asked me if he could go and work for maize, and that happened, and he went over there, and I told him, and because here we are very labor intensive.
Yeah.
So farmers of that nature would have like 150 people doing everything.
Right.
But in Canada, they were doing it alone, which just almost seems just too hard to believe. Yeah. But the machines they have, even at that time, are mind-blowing.
Yes.
So he would say, this thing that he would sit in fully air-conditioned television set, the works. And he's in this thing. And from there, he was farming his entire 3,600 acres.
It is incredible.
Admittedly, he taught me that 1 year, they only farm a piece of land every second year.
Right.
And at that time, Canada was the wheat bowl of the world. Didn't you know that?
Yes, I know. It was
considered the wheat basket or something of the world.
Yes, yes.
And they were giving Russia free wheat. They had so much they were giving it away. But at any rate, every second year, one of those 1,200 acre stretches were farmed. So every odd year, it was left. They folded the snow. They explained to me they fold the snow back into the ground.
Right.
And they leave it fallow for a year before they reuse it, so that it can recover. If you understand what I mean.
Yes. No. Sure.
And so that was very interesting to see, and that was a very long time ago.
Yeah.
So I imagine that sort of thing has extended itself to many places now.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, here in South Africa, we have many wine farms, and each bunch of grapes cannot be pulled off by a machine.
Right.
It is delicately removed by hand, and I imagine there are machines that can harvest oranges and apples, perhaps.
Yes.
But grapes, I don't think so. So
not yet, and I think that's the thing, isn't it? But going back to, because it was something you enjoyed doing, and it's rather like shopping. People like to go to shops, they like to interact with real people, even though at the press of a button you do it all online. You've got these wonderful machines now that can say, look, you've run out of eggs, because there's a little sensor when you take all the eggs out, it will tell you that this is what you need. You've got AI that can tell you recipes you can make with all the leftovers and things like that. And I think this is the problem, isn't it? It's looking at the future, what's going to happen with people and their leisure time? Because if people don't have a purpose, it's why I think a lot of people die when they retire, because they no longer have a purpose.
No, you're true. That's very right. very accurate, very true, very, very true. I don't know what to say. I just know that there are many in this area where in Africa where we live, or in South Africa, it is labor intensive, and I imagine in places like yours, labor is not that easy to come by, and right. To a certain extent, many of these people who are coming into the country will probably wind up working on farms and things. I'm not sure, so-called illegal immigrants and so on. Perhaps, I don't know, but there are many things that still need to be done by hand. And as the society becomes more sophisticated, the youngsters don't want to be put in that position. They want to, if family can afford it, they want to study, and they want to go into a field that they enjoy.
Right.
And of course that is a modus operandi in the United States. Don't do a job that you don't enjoy.
Yeah.
Elon, at one time when Tesla was very young, he got everybody together, and he in groups, I think it was, and he said to them, "I want you all to tell me why you enjoy Tesla, working at Tesla." Something to that effect. And I know Elon would have done this because he's like me, and I can imagine him doing it because I know he did this. Yeah. He told me. And every single person who said they don't like their job, he dismissed.
Right.
He simply dismissed them. They said, "But why are you dismissing me?" He said, "Well, you told me you don't like your job. You said you don't like the job.
Yeah.
So you dismissed. You're fired." And he did it.
Yes.
And so in America, you work for Tesla because you like working for Tesla. Not only do you like it, you love it.
Yeah.
And I remember when we started SpaceX in 2002, I was in the United States, and I was with the first 9 or 10 people that started SpaceX. And I was living in Malibu, which was about 40 miles or so from El Segundo, where the SpaceX factory, which is still there in Hawthorne, one of the factories. And that was the first. It was an old derelict warehouse that Elon bought. And it was very run down. The lights were hanging out the ceiling. It was leaking. The roof was leaking. It was really not great. He turned this into an operating theater with an enameled floor. Turned this into an operating theater. It was used in the film Iron Man,
right,
as the sort of laboratory of the Iron Man, sort of thing. But he turned this into that. I started doing that with replacing ceilings and replacing lights and all that sort of stuff. I did that for him. And what was I talking about? Yes, I living so far away, and we had 5 children with us then. My 2 daughters and my second wife's 3 other children. And so I was taking children to school in the morning and things like that. And then I would get down to El Segundo at about 9, maybe 9:30. And of course, I also missed all the horrible traffic that was on the 405. It was terrible. Yeah. But anyway, I would then also, my wife would say to me when I was married then, and she would say, "So-and-so are coming for supper." So I would leave El Segundo, the Hawthorne factory, the SpaceX factory, at maybe 4, so that I could be back for the supper, which we were going to enjoy, you see. And I noticed that the other 9 or 10 people, this was the guy who did the SpaceX, he was the head of space research in Germany. Elon poached him, Tom Muller, who he poached from jet propulsion, and so on. That they were all looked at me, I'd come back in, and then I eventually, didn't take me long, I noticed that none of them go home.
Right. And
then I'd hear talk like Tom Muller would say. He was a famous guy, and he's really famous. He's retired now. Yeah. He was instrumental in SpaceX. So was Hans, and they would talk about supper the previous evening, that they'd been to Houston's for supper. It was like a spare rib restaurant, you see?
Yes.
And it was so good, we're going to go there again, So over the days that followed, I sort of what's the supper story? Oh, no, we went for supper. And then it dawned on me, these guys are going for lunch and for supper. Lunch was usually Burger King, which was terrible, which I sometimes went with because but it was terrible. You know, not good food for me. I didn't like it. I had the salads. And then in the evening, they would start going to other places and Euston's. And I realized, I said, what time do you get home at the evening, you know? And Hans was a very dedicated guy, typical German, you know. I mean, he was like, you know, yeah, well, you know, I will be, you know, I will do whatever you will say. Anyway, he was getting home like 10 o'clock every night. And I said to him one day, what time do you come in? He says, well, you know, to avoid the traffic. He lived in Long Beach, which was not so bad, getting to Alexandra. He said, I leave at 6 o'clock in the morning, you know, or something like that, with an accent, you know. I leave at 6 o'clock in the morning, you know. And I said, oh, what time do you get in? He said, oh, I'm in at about 6:30, you know. So I thought, oh my God, 6:30 to 10. Okay. And so I realized I have to start doing the same thing. So I started doing the same thing, which had a tremendously bad effect on my marriage.
Right.
My wife said she was going to kill herself if I don't stop doing this. She's going to kill herself. You know, obviously, right. You know, not really. But I mean, she's going to kill herself. If you do this anymore, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill myself. Because I wasn't coming home. I was staying with these chaps. And of course, it was lovely because you'd go out to Euston's. We went there a lot. Elon loved Euston's. And we'd have this terrific meal and we'd be back at work again.
Right.
And that was loving your job.
Yeah, and it is interesting, isn't it? Because you're loving your job more than the family and things like that. It is a fascinating.
No, you can't do that.
Yeah,
I mean, can't do
that. No, you're absolutely right. It is that life-work balance. Well, we're going to look a bit more into that. We're going to take a break now, but when we come back, we'll have a deeper dive into your glorious family history and what the future might hold.
Okay.